This is GloomNode. Every hull that goes quiet out there ends up as a file on a desk. This desk. I'm the archivist, keeper of the registry of hulls and souls, and your host down here among the closed cases. The registry writes what it can prove and shuts the drawer. I keep the other half. Pull up a chair. Tonight, a little station at the far end of the wire. 6 people whose whole job was passing along other people's messages, and the letters that started arriving from a week that hadn't happened yet.
Registry of Hulls and Souls. Case 9588 filed precedent. Subject Relay Node 9 Serrat Spur. Meridian installation compact licensed for third-party carriage. Station designation Cairn. Rated 8 worked by 6. 4 souls unrecovered. 2 recovered at relief. Structure sound. Plant sound. Coupling compliant. Cause of loss undetermined. Case closed, station returned to service. Souls accounted for redacted. Clearance citation 11C.
Come in. Shut the door. It sticks. Look at the bottom of that card before we start. Souls accounted for. Blacked out. You have to know what this building is for. When the Overture went missing, a whole ship, 1,200 people asleep in her, gone between 1 week and the next, they built this registry and gave it one job: count them. Every hull, every soul, every time. 4 lost. 2 home. 6 aboard. There is nothing wrong with that arithmetic. A child could do it in her head. Somebody blacked it out anyway. And I can't find out who. So set it down beside you and leave it there. 6 people went out to that station. 2 came home. I'm going to tell you about the 4 because nobody else is going to. They filed it under precedent. That's a word the compact keeps for paperwork about a thing that didn't happen. Picture a lamp on a long, dark road. 100 miles behind you to the last house, 100 ahead to the next, and nothing either side but the dark and the cold and whatever's in it. That's Cairn. A lump of rock and iron bolted to nothing at all, out where the maps go pale, and its whole purpose in this world was to pass along messages that were none of its business. A man on Aldrin writes to his sister on the frontier. The words go through Cairn. Neither of them has ever heard the name, and neither of them ever will. Hold the shape of the place, because the shape of the place is the shape of the story. A small lit room where 6 people lived, a long cold corridor running out of it, and the hall at the end of that corridor. Now I have to tell you how the wire works, and I'm going to take my time because everything that happened to those 6 people happened inside that machine. There's a particle out there that cannot slow down. Not, will not, cannot. It has never once been still. Not since the first morning of the universe. Everything you and I are made of gets heavier the harder you push it, and light is the wall you never quite reach. This thing lives on the other side of that wall. Pour energy into it and it slows, dragging down toward the speed of light and never touching it from above. Take the energy back out and it goes faster. Strip it to nothing at all, and it is everywhere in creation at once. We didn't invent it, we found it, and then we spent 140 years trying to make it carry a sentence. The trouble is, you cannot hold one. You can't store it, you can't steer it, you can't put it in a box and carry it about. There is exactly one thing in this universe a tachyon will consent to notice, and that is a very great deal of very cold, very still matter. So they build the mass, 40 tons of it, held a hair above absolute nothing, in a hall of its own, sunk on a foundation that goes down into rock. Then they take 2 of them, one here, one 20 light years off, and they spend the better part of a year bringing them into step. Bell tuning, the old hands call it. You tune the 2 so fine and so slowly that afterward each will only ever hear the other. That's a coupling. Once it's made, you cannot unmake it, and you cannot turn it to face somewhere new. Those 2 lumps of frozen metal are married for as long as they both last. Which is why no ship carries one. You cannot bolt 40 tons of cold silence onto a thing that moves. Opening the coupling costs heat, and heat is the enemy of the whole arrangement, so nobody leaves it open. You open it when it's your turn. They call that a window. And what fits through is thin. Letters. That's all it will carry. No voices, no pictures, nothing with a shape to it. The alphabet and the numbers and a space between the words, charged by the character, itemized, billed monthly. So a crew in trouble can tell the whole of creation about it in 4 minutes flat. And then sit there for 2 months, waiting on a boat that runs to somebody else's timetable. The wire moved the words. It never once moved the help. The men who own it are called the Compact. 40 worlds, a vote each, and it makes no odds whether there's 90 million people on your world or 9,000, which means the little ones are for sale and are sold, and everybody knows it. They meet when they feel like meeting. Between meetings, nothing can be decided by anyone. Nobody on Cairn had ever laid eyes on one of them. Every soul on Cairn had an opinion. Here's the part that troubled people, back when the wire was new and you need it clear before we go on. When a thing outruns light, the order it happens in stops being a fact about the world. It becomes a matter of where you're standing. 2 men can watch the same 2 events from different chairs and disagree about which came first, and neither is wrong, and there's no third man who can settle it, because there is no true answer to settle on. Send a message quick enough between 2 ends that are moving apart, and the arithmetic will let the answer arrive ahead of the question. They gave it an official name, a precedence exception. Every technician who ever worked a coupling has a drawer full of them, and a form to fill in, and an opinion about the form. Ren Adisa called them earlies, and so did everybody else. A letter that came early. It is harmless. I want to be fair about that, because of everything that comes after. In 11 years on that station, it had never once been anything but harmless. Now, the number. Messages come in, messages go out, you write them down, and you close the book. And at the end of every turn, Ren called the count right across the room. Loud, because the chief liked hearing it, and Ren liked a reason to stop working. Window 212. 4. 4 letters that came early. That's all it means. It is the dullest number in creation, and by the end of tonight, it's the only one that matters. 6 of them. I'd like you to know them, because after tonight, I only get to say the names once more. Thea Brannick had the station, 2nd time out, and her whole ambition in this life was 6 people standing on that boat in 90 days, ungrateful and complaining. Ren counted. And Dov Marchetti ran the plant and did not trust one single object in this universe that he had not personally tightened with his own 2 hands. He would walk past a door that was working perfectly well and tighten it anyway, on principle, and then look at you. Amos van der Leur had 20 years on stations like that one, and a position he'd defend to anybody who sat still long enough. Nothing ever happens on a relay node. He had the evidence for it. 2 decades of it, every year dull as a wet Sunday. And Perrin Salt was 19, first posting. He'd brought 400 books out with him because they told him at fitting out that he'd have the time, and God help him, they were right. He'd get Amos telling the one about the station on the Kestrel line where nothing happened for 4 years. That's the story. That's all of it. There's no ending. And Perrin laughed every time. Every single time, like he'd never heard it. Which is the sort of thing a boy of 19 does that costs him nothing and means everything. Ilsa Naumann was the odd one, and I want you to hold on to her. 5 of them drew Meridian's pay. Ilsa didn't. She was the compact's, the licensed one, the only body on that station permitted to put her name to what crossed the wire. She couldn't give Brannick an order, and Brannick couldn't give her one, and in 11 years nobody had ever tested it, because there had never once been a reason to. She played cards every night, and she lost, consistently, cheerfully, and came back the next night to lose again, and all 5 of them were fond of her. It cost her. Which brings us down the corridor. The mass sat in its own hall at the far end, its own air, its own cold, a cold you could not survive an hour in, held there on purpose, because the whole trick of the thing is stillness, dark, unless you carried a light in with you, a good few minutes' walk from anywhere warm. Once a turn, somebody had to go out there and look at it, with their own eyes, and sign their name to what they saw. Not a machine. A machine's word was no good to them. A machine can't be hauled up in front of anybody, and a machine has nothing to lose. They wanted a person. Somebody to blame. 15 minutes, there and back. The dullest job on the dullest station in the world, and there was no getting out of it. And I want you to hear the place, because they heard it every hour of their lives out there. A relay station has 3 sounds and no others. There's the plant, which is a low, steady note under everything, the way a held organ pedal sits under a hymn. You stop hearing it inside a week, and you'd hear it stop from a dead sleep. There's the corridor, which ticks. Metal that cold contracts all night and gives it back all day. And it knocks, irregular, like somebody a long way off deciding whether to come in. And there's the chime. Mail's in. 2 notes, cheap and bright. The sound of somebody else's business arriving. That's it. That's the whole world, 40 times a day, for 90 days, and then another 90. Remember the chime. So, window 218, and an early comes in, and it isn't somebody else's. It's theirs. A plant reading of Dov's Routine, the sort of thing that goes out 4 times a day and no living person ever reads. Out at 9 minutes past the hour, in at 11 minutes before it. Wren wrote it up and complained about the second page of the form. Dov said, in that case, he'd like to be paid twice for it. Perrin never looked up from his book. That's the whole of it. That's the first one. Nobody's heart moved an inch, and I'd rather yours didn't either, because at this hour of the evening, it is worth nothing at all. 2 bits of paper from around then, and I'll only lay them on the table. Their tour got stretched by 90 days, and pinned to it was a rise in pay that not one soul had asked for. A combine pays what it is made to pay, and never a credit past it. Anyone who has drawn wages from one will tell you the same. This was past it. Brannick looked it over twice and put it in the drawer. And the license money Meridian handed the compact for that station was reckoned on a crew of 8. There were 6. There had been 6 for 11 years. So a development combine had been paying all that time a fee on 2 people who did not exist. It's in the ledger. Anyone could have looked. Nobody did. Let me give you a week of them, and then we'll get on with it. Perrin in the mess, with his boots on a chair and a book flat on his chest, asleep. Amos halfway through the Kestrel story again. Ilsa laying her cards down and losing again. Dov with his hands inside something that did not need him. And Brannick's 90 days chalked on the wall of that little lit room, right next to Wren's count, both numbers going the way she wanted them to go. Window 219, 5. Window 220, 5. Window 221. And Wren stopped and said it again because she thought she'd miscounted her own handwriting, and went back and counted them one at a time with her finger, the way you do. 7. The count climbed, and what was in it changed. By the end of that week, every early on Wren's sheet was theirs, not somebody else's mail passing through, their own words, going out and coming back at them. Her first thought was a loop on the outbound side, which is a real fault, and a common one, and exactly what you or I would have said. Dov spent a day and a half proving it wasn't there, took the path apart down to the pin, laid it out along the mess table in order, like a man setting out cutlery for a dinner he wasn't invited to, and put it back together again. He was cheerful about it the whole time. He stopped being cheerful when he finished, because a man who tightens things for a living has just discovered there is nothing here to tighten. Ilsa's reading was the professional one, and she gave it flat because it wasn't dramatic. Precedent's exceptions cluster. That's known. That's in the book. There's a whole annex about it with worked examples, which she went and fetched and put on the table so everyone could see the shape of the thing was ordinary. 2 ends drifting apart. A bad month. A run of them. It happens on the long spurs. It had happened on the Kestrel line the year Amos was there, and Amos confirmed it, and everyone felt better. She filled the form. She booked a window. She'd send it in and get somebody on Aldrin to look at it properly. Nobody argued, because there was nothing to argue with. That was the right thing to do, and she did it. And they wired it in. Correctly. The proper form, the annex attached, sent at the proper priority. The compact answered in 4 minutes. 4 minutes. That is the fastest anything had ever happened to any of those people in their working lives, 20 light years there and back before the kettle boiled, and I want you to feel how strange that is, because they felt it. Dov whistled, and what came back was a case number, a reviewing officer's initials, and a note asking that the annex be resubmitted on the current revision of the form, the one issued at the last meeting. Dov said something I'm not going to repeat. Ilse filled out the new form. Then the mail stopped being plant readings. Window 226. An early comes in, and it's a page out of the station's own log. Their record. The book they keep. Right format, right heading, right signatures at the foot of it, right check figures down the margin the way the compact wants them. Written in the past tense. Filed, closed, complete. Dated 9 days ahead. And here is the thing that got to them fastest, and it isn't what you'd expect. The page was dull. A consumption figure. A filter change, with the part number written out. Perrin Salt's initials against a job he hadn't done yet. A prophecy you can fight. A prophecy announces itself. It has weather round it, and a man can stand up in his own house and tell it no. But there's nothing in a maintenance entry to argue with. It doesn't want anything from you. It isn't asking. Somebody has simply already written it down. So they did what competent people do, which is try to prove it false. Amos ran the check figures. Clean. Wren set the signatures against 11 years of the book and against Perrin's own 3 months, letter by letter, with a glass. Clean. Dov took the receiving side apart for the second time in a week. Clean. And Ilsa went one better because she could. Every character that crosses that wire is copied to the compact at one end and to this registry at the other by charter, and neither of them will give the copy up without a fight. She fought. She got it. She set their page against the compact's page against ours. 3 copies, 3 institutions, 1 document, all 3 the same. Everything came back clean, and I want to be precise here because this is the difference between a puzzle and a horror. A fault would have been a mercy. A fault has a location. You can walk to a location with a bag of tools in your hand and a bad mood, and you can put it right, and then you can have your dinner. What they had was a document correct in every particular a human being is able to check, describing a day that had not occurred. Clean is worse than broken. Clean means the trouble isn't in the station. 4 ideas, and every one of them held by somebody with the standing to hold it. Dov said instrument fault. We haven't found it. That's all. Give me the stack again. Ilsa said, clustering. Textbook. It's in the annex. Amos said, it's the spur. Bad coupling, ragged old node. Rubbish in and rubbish out, and I've seen it twice. And Wren said hers once, quietly, and then never said it again. Somebody aboard is doing this. Hers is the one that poisoned the room, because it's the only one with a person in it. She never accused anybody. She was careful, and she was decent, and she never put a name anywhere near it. It made no difference at all. Once you have said out loud that one of 5 people is writing these, you do not get to take it back out of the room. It moves in. It pulls up a chair. And 6 people who had been easy with one another for 2 months start being very slightly careful about where they stand and who can see them standing there. Perrin stopped reading in the mess and started reading in his berth. Nobody remarked on it. Everybody noticed. And then a small thing happened that I think frightened them worse than the cold did, though not one of them could have told you why. They argued about a page. Wren had it that the Tuesday sheet gave the filter change at 0400. Amos was certain it said 06 because he'd built his week round it. Perrin remembered a part number neither of the others recalled at all. So they went and got it out of the file, the way reasonable people do, expecting somebody to be wrong and everybody to laugh. It said something none of the 3 of them remembered. And the copies matched. Theirs, the compacts, ours. 3 institutions, 1 document. No disagreement anywhere except inside the heads of 3 people who had all seen it 4 days earlier and gone about their business. Now, memory is a liar. Everybody's is. Ask any 2 people in this building what a card said last winter. Wren said that out loud, and she was right to. But after that, none of them could prove a single thing they remembered. Not to anybody else. Not to themselves. And around then, the hall got cold. Not cold, colder. It was always cold. The cold is the point of it. But Dov logged the hall a degree under the turn before, and then another degree under that, and the plant said it was working perfectly, and the plant was right. He tore the loop down anyway, because that is who he was, and found nothing, because there was nothing. So he started wearing his outdoor rig for a 15-minute walk down a pressurized corridor, and they gave him hell for it, and he kept doing it. He was still doing it at the end. Window 231. 9. The number was in the room by then. Nobody had said what it meant, and I want to be fair to them, because nobody knew what it meant. There was nothing there yet to know. But Wren had started chalking it on the wall in the lit room under Brannick's 90 days, where all 6 of them walked past it 4 times a day. Then the pages came off the wire. One in Perrin's berth, face up on the blanket, in a room that locks and was locked, and he had the only key on a string round his neck. One in the mess, under a cup, on a table that 4 of them had been sitting round for the better part of an hour. There is no path from the receiving side to a locked room. There is no machine on that station that carries paper anywhere. Somebody has to pick it up and walk. And Dov's fault theory died right there, and he was the one who killed it. Stood up in the middle of the mess and said, "All right, it's not the stack. It was never the stack." He said it like a man losing an argument he had badly wanted to lose. So Wren went out to the hall, because there was one question left that could still be settled by looking. When they marry 2 of those masses, they strike a plate, brass, letters punched into it by hand, bolted to the housing on the day the coupling is made. It's the deed. It says what this station is married to, and it is the only record in the universe that cannot be edited, because you cannot edit a hole in metal. You can only strike a new plate, and only the compact can do that, and only at a meeting, and they had not met in 8 months. She had walked past it 400 times. Nobody reads the deed. You read the deed the day you arrive, and then you never read it again, and she was not entirely certain she had looked at it even then. It had 3 lines on it. 2 of them she could read. The third was a designation that answered to nothing. Not a station, not a world, not a hull on any list she had access to, and the letters weren't right. The strike of them, the shape of the type. It wasn't a typeface the compact uses. It wasn't a typeface she could find anywhere. Struck into brass, bolted to that housing 11 years before she was ever posted there. You can doubt a piece of paper. You cannot doubt cold metal that was cut before your career started. Nobody slept in the lit room that night, and the reason is worth saying plainly. A plate cannot be haunted. It's a lump of metal with holes in it. What that plate is evidence of is that 11 years ago, on the day they married those 2 masses, somebody struck 3 lines into brass, and every man and woman who signed off on that day is a name on a document in a building on Aldrin, with an address and a pension and a personnel file. Whatever else was happening to them, at least one part of it had been done by people, in an office, with a form. Amos found the second thing because he'd commissioned 4 of these himself, and he knew where to look. The date struck on that plate is earlier than the day the station was built, by 5 weeks. And he gave them the dull answer himself before anybody could ask him for it. Plates get struck in batches at a foundry, ahead of schedule, all the time. Perfectly normal. Seen it a dozen times. It is normal. It's probably true. He didn't believe a word of it, and he didn't say so, and he went to bed. So Brannick escalated, and she did it exactly right. Emergency priority, plain language, no speculation, the way you're trained. And the wire took it, because the wire is very fast. Inside 4 minutes, there was a person on Aldrin who knew precisely what was happening on that station. Sit with that one a moment. Somebody knew. Somebody took in her words with a drink in their hand, while all 6 of those people were still alive and still in one room together. What came back was a place in the queue, a form number, and a scheduling note. Next boat on the Serrat spur, 61 days. And that timetable isn't the compact's, and it isn't meridians, and it certainly isn't the timetable of whoever saw her message. Nobody moves a boat. They could tell the whole world in a quarter of an hour, and it changed nothing at all. 6 people running the switchboard of the frontier, and not one soul on earth could reach them. And Ilse Naumann made the decision that defined the rest of her life, and I want to be very clear with you about it before I tell you what it cost. She made it correctly. There was a documented thing in the book. There was an annex about clustering with worked examples. She held the license. She was the only person on that station who did, and 5 people she had lost at cards to every night for 2 months had not slept properly in a fortnight. So she certified it. Clustering, ordinary, harmless, signed, sent at the proper priority on the current revision of the form. That is the right paperwork, filed the right way, by the right person, on the evidence available. I want that on the record because of what people said about her afterward. And the earlies stopped. Window 241, nothing. Window 242, nothing. 4 days of nothing at all. I'm going to give you those 4 days properly because they had them and because it's the last of it. Dov slept in his own berth for the first time in 3 weeks and slept badly, out of habit, and then slept well. Perrin got through a whole book and came out to the mess to tell Ilse about it, at length, and she let him. Wren rubbed the count off the wall with her sleeve and didn't put a new one up. Brannick chalked her 90 days back where they'd been, and Amos said the thing he'd been saying for 20 years, and for once in his life, not one person argued with him. Nothing ever happens on a relay node. They were all right, all 6 of them, for 4 days. That was the last of it. Then the form came back, countersigned by the compact's own office, reviewed, approved, closed, with the case disposition attached and a reference number for the file. All of it in order, all of it perfectly, thoroughly ordinary, the sort of letter a working officer waits 3 weeks for and is glad to see. Ilse carried it across the room to show Brannick because it was good news. It was dated before she filed it. Not by minutes, by 9 days. The compact, venal, useless, 40 worlds of bought votes and a council that will not sit had processed her paperwork with perfect correctness and handed those 6 people the worst object in this entire file. And there was nothing wrong with the document. That's what I need you to hold on to. Every stamp on it was right. Every signature was real. Somebody in an office 20 light years away had gone through her form and agreed with her and closed the case. 9 days before she wrote it. Ilse didn't speak for a long while. When she did, all she said was that she'd like to see the envelope it came in. Brannick's instinct was the right instinct, and it was the first thing out of her mouth. Go dark. Stop sending. Shut the coupling, sit still and quiet for 61 days, and let the boat find us. And Ilse had to be the one to explain why she couldn't, and she did it flatly, because it isn't an argument, it's a fact. A station that stops passing traffic is in breach of its license. Breach means the bill goes unpaid. Unpaid means they cut you off. And it isn't a man with a switch, it's a vote at a meeting of 40 worlds who have not sat down together in 8 months and have no plans to. Cut off, you don't come back until they meet. And they meet when they feel like meeting. They'd have been dark for a year. And here's the piece Brannick got to about 4 seconds after Ilse stopped talking, and you can watch her get there in the log. The boat isn't coming for them. It's coming for a working station. A dead node isn't a stop on anybody's route. It's a line item somebody deals with next season. Go quiet, and you don't buy 61 days of peace. You buy a year of it, and nobody at the end. So they worked their windows, every single one, correctly, on the hour, to the letter, because that was what those 6 people had left. And the count climbed. Window 238, 14. Wren stopped calling it out, just chalked it up and went back to her station. After about a day of that, Brannick came over and asked her to keep saying it out loud, and Wren asked her why. And Brannick said, "Because if you stop saying it, I'm going to start checking the wall." The pages kept coming, and what the crew were to them changed, and this is the part nobody plans for. They stopped being a fault. They became a rota. Perrin caught himself one morning reading tomorrow's page before he looked at the actual duty list, checking what he was going to do before checking what he was meant to do, and he was disgusted with himself, and he said so to Ilsa, and she told him not to be daft. He did it again the next morning. So did everyone. Somewhere in there, they each wrote out, "I have all 4 because everything on that wire is copied and nothing on it is private," and I don't think one of them forgot that for a second. Dov wrote to a brother he hadn't spoken to in 9 years, and the whole of it is about a boat they'd owned together, and there is not one word in it about the station. Wren wrote to nobody. She wrote a list of the counts, every turn since 212, and sent it to her own file at Aldrin, addressed to whoever came after. Perrin wrote to his mother and told her the food was good. And Amos, who had 20 years and no family listed anywhere, wrote 11 characters to the man who had trained him, 40 years dead by then, at an address that hadn't existed since before the compact. The wire took it, charged him for it. It goes out into the dark, and it doesn't stop. Amos ran the only real experiment any of them had. He had a page that said he pulled a filter housing in 6 days. So he went and pulled it that afternoon and broke it doing it, deliberately I think, though he never said, and logged the break in his own hand at the time it happened. 6 days later, the page for that day came in, and it said exactly as it had before. Doing what it said and refusing to do what it said produced identical paper. He only ever said one thing about it. It doesn't care what I do. Window 251, 31. Dov Marchetti went out for the walk at 4:10 in the morning in his outdoor rig, the way he had for 19 turns running, while every one of them took the mickey out of him for it. He signed the mass state at 12 minutes past. That's on the log. That's how they know he got there, because a signature is a legal act, and it carries the hour with it. The corridor door is on the warm side, and Wren was at her station, and she was looking straight at it. He did not come back through it. When they opened the hall, they found his rig, standing up, sealed, empty, and the mass, and the plate, and the cold. No man, no mark on anything, no sound on any channel, and every channel on that station was recording, and the registry has all of it, and I have listened to the lot. Brannick's entry that morning reads, in full, Marchetti, D, plant engineer, unrecovered. Hall entered, hall cleared, hall sealed. Mass state signed and compliant. She wrote that last sentence because it was true, and because the form has a place for it. And then the coldest thing in this file, and it takes about 9 seconds. A page came in on the next turn carrying the loss entry for Dov Marchetti. Right format, right heading, Brannick's own hand. Dated tomorrow. She had to file the real one anyway, because the form is the form, and a man is dead, and you file it. When she'd done it, she laid the two side by side on the mess table. They differed by nothing whatsoever. Not a word, not a comma. Now, the license does not care that a man is gone. The walk was due the next turn, and every turn after that, for as long as that station drew breath, because somebody has to go and look at it with their own eyes, and a machine's word is no good to anybody. There were 5 names left. One of them had to be on the line. And the damage started arriving ahead of itself. A page described a failed seal on the corridor's inner door, dated 4 days out, with the fault code and the figures on it. Amos went and looked at that seal, and it was sound. He tested it twice and signed it off, and said so in front of everybody. 2 turns later, it wasn't sound, and the failure didn't resemble the page. It matched it. Same code, same figures, same wording, down to the shorthand the station's own system uses for a pressure loss. After that, the corridor began running to the hall's temperature. The cold came up it toward the lit room, a meter or 2 at a time, and the plant said everything was working perfectly, and the plant was right. Window 256. 60. Wren stopped chalking it on the wall. Brannick asked her about it, and she said she'd rather it wasn't up where Perrin had to walk past it. She wrote it on the back of her hand instead, every turn, in ink, and washed it off and wrote the next one. Then a page came in that wasn't a log entry at all. It was a crew statement. That's the form this registry uses for a deposition, attributed, signed, witnessed. A document that exists for exactly one purpose, which is to be quoted aloud at an inquiry after everyone concerned is past helping. And it put one sentence in the mouth of Amos van der Leur. His own words, his own name at the foot of it. Time-stamped 6 days out. Seal it. They're already gone. Check figures clean. Signature clean. Both copies clean. Think what that does to a small room. Nobody accused him. Nobody would have. They were decent people, and they'd known him for months, and they liked him. But 4 of them now knew a thing about a man that the man did not know about himself, and there is no way on this earth to unknow it, and he could see them not knowing it every time he came through a door. 20 years without a mark on his record. 20 years of nothing ever happening. And the only evidence anybody would ever have about his character now came from a week that hadn't arrived. And he kept working. That's the part of this I find hardest to set down. He didn't withdraw, and he didn't sulk, and he never once made anybody sit through him defending himself against a piece of paper. He stood his turns. He ran his checks. He was useful, in a station where every room he walked into had already made up its mind about him. Then he went and found Brannick on her own and gave her his own reading of it, which was the wrong reading and was the only reasonable one anybody had. It means, he told her, that sooner or later I'm going to be stood at a door with people on the other side of it, and I'm going to make a call. So take it off me. The seal's on my name. Put it on yours, or put it on Wren's, but get it off me now, while I'm still the one asking. And she did, logged it, and moved it to her own name that afternoon. It was the right decision, made for the right reasons, by a good chief. It did not matter in the slightest. Ilsa took the walks after that, all of them, every turn, no rota, no discussion. Because it was her license that demanded them, because she had signed the certificate. And because she was the only person on that station who could do the arithmetic on what she believed that signature had bought them. Brannick fought her on it, properly, twice, in front of everybody, and discovered the thing this whole reach is built on, which is that a Meridian station chief cannot give an order to a compact officer and never could. 11 years of people being polite to one another, and underneath it, nothing. No authority anywhere. Just two women in a cold room, one of whom had decided. She didn't come back either. Window 261. Her signature is on the log at 48 minutes past 2, in her own hand, on time, compliant. The hall was cold, and it was empty, and it held the mass, and the plate, and 3 lines of brass. 4 of them left, and the count wasn't a number anybody called out anymore. It was the temperature in the corridor, and the corridor was getting shorter. Brannick's plan was a good plan, and I'd have made the same one. 51 days to the boat, 4 people, 1 warm room, and a hall that nobody enters. They would send the smallest amount of traffic the license would tolerate, the bare minimum, character counted, nothing else, and they would not open that corridor again for any reason whatsoever. It half worked. Half working is worse than not working, because half working keeps you doing it. The count slowed. It did not stop. They had found the floor of what the license would permit, and they held themselves to it exactly, and the floor was not 0. It was never going to be 0. A station in good standing is a station that is talking. And the walk was still due. It had never once stopped being due. There is no version of a licensed station anywhere in this reach where a living person does not go out to that hall every turn and put their name to what they saw, because a machine cannot be hauled up in front of anybody. That is the whole architecture. That is what the entire wire is built on. 4 names left. One of them had to be on the line. Perrin Salt was 19 years old, and it was his first posting, and he took the turn because it was his turn. Brannick had the station and couldn't be spared. Wren was the only one left who could work the traffic, and Amos was not going near a door anymore, by his own request, in writing, in his own hand. So Perrin went out at window 268. He signed the mass state at 1:30 in the morning. And the corridor door did not open again. Amos went in after him, and he didn't make a speech about it. He took the seal back, and notice how, because it matters, it wasn't locked. It had never been locked. He had given it up, and giving a thing up is the only kind of authority anybody on that station ever actually had. He put it back in his own name in the log and told Brannick to stand at the inner door and do exactly what he said, when he said it. The only thing that reaches that hall is the wire. That's the joke, and I won't dress it up. The coupling works everywhere on Cairn, because the coupling is the one thing on Cairn that was built properly. So he was out there on the housing, in a cold that kills a man inside the hour, tapping letters, character by character, to a woman standing 30 meters away. Because there are no voices on that wire. There never have been, and there never will be. The best connected station in the reach, and a man at the end of his life spelling it out. And then the window chime sounded. You've been hearing that tone all night. It's the most ordinary sound on that station. Mails in, every turn, the noise of a normal day at work. It came out of the hall, out of the mass, which has no bell on it, and never has had, and is not a thing that makes a sound. During no window, And then came the last traffic Cairn ever passed. 4 words, out of that hall, time-stamped and logged and copied by charter to this registry, which is the only reason I have them in front of me tonight. Seal it. They're already gone. He isn't stood at a door with people on the other side of it. He's on the other side. Perrin was already dead, and Amos was not coming out, and the they in that sentence is Perrin Salt and Amos Vandeleur. And he is spending the last thing he owns to make a chief do what she is not going to want to do. That deposition was correct in every particular, correctly attributed, correctly quoted, correctly certified by 3 institutions in triplicate. 5 people had it in front of them for 6 days, and every single one of them took it exactly wrong. And they weren't stupid, and they weren't cruel. I'd have taken it the same way. So would you. The document never lied to anybody. They just could not imagine the version of it where he was the one inside. Brannick sealed it. That's the beat. She sealed the corridor, and she was right to, and it saved her, and it saved Renadisa, and it is the worst thing that woman will ever do in her life. 11 seconds. From his last letter landing to the seal, reading closed. 11 seconds, because he told her to. And because she had spent 2 months learning that when Amos Vandeleur told you something about a door, he was right about it. And then the 2 of them stood in that little lit room, and the station went on working. That's the part nobody tells you. The plant held its note. The corridor ticked. The mail came in on the hour and wanted passing along, and if they didn't pass it, the license lapsed, so Wren sat down at her station with her hands not quite steady and passed it along. Brannick went and looked at the wall where the 90 days were chalked up. 51 left. She rubbed it out with her sleeve. Not out of despair, I don't think. I think she'd stopped believing a number on a wall was a thing you could bargain with. Neither of them said his name for 6 days. They both told the inquiry so, separately, and neither of them could explain it. Then 6 days. 2 women, a sealed corridor, and a station in perfect good standing. They sent their minimum. They filed their forms. They kept the license. Nothing came for them. Not the thing, and not anybody else. They sat in a lit room at the end of the Serrat spur being, technically, on paper, in every respect the compact measures, a functioning relay node. The boat came on Halvard's timetable. Not early. Not late. Exactly when it would have come on any other day, for any other reason, to a station where nothing whatsoever had happened. 2 came off. The pilot's log notes that the station chief carried out a sealed document case and would not put it down, not to climb the ladder, not to strap in, not when he asked her twice. They were examined at Calder and released to service. Calder sees a lot of people who came off something. It has a very good canteen and a chapel nobody uses, and the staff there have learned not to ask.
Supplementary finding. Structure sound. Plant sound. Coupling compliant with the commissioning record on file. No evidence of interference, external or internal. Cause of loss undetermined. Disposition closed. Installation recertified. Return to service.
Return to service. Cairn is passing traffic tonight. Right now, while you and I are sitting here, somebody on Aldrin is writing to somebody out on the frontier, and the words are going through a little lit room at the end of the Serrat spur, and neither of them has ever heard the name, and neither of them ever will. There's a crew of 6 aboard, 2 months into their tour. And if you ask them, they'd tell you it's the dullest posting in the world. 2 things that file will not do, and then I'll let you go. It won't tell me why there were 3 lines on that plate. And it won't tell me how many souls were accounted for. 4 lost, 2 home, 6 aboard. I can do that arithmetic, and so can you, and there is nothing wrong with it anywhere. Somebody blacked out a line that had nothing in it worth hiding. I've seen that citation before. I'm not going to tell you where. One last thing, and then the lamp goes off. On a wire where every soul alive waits their turn, Meridian's letters to that station were never late, not once. In 11 years, filed under precedent, which is the compact's word for paperwork about a thing that didn't happen. Good night.